The champagne glass trembled in Rania's hand as her father's words echoed across the marble terrace of the Casablanca Hotel. "You will marry him, or we lose everything." Below them, the Atlantic Ocean crashed against the rocks, but inside the private dining room, the silence was deafening. 50 guests continued their conversations, unaware that a woman's entire future was being bartered like stock on the trading floor. Rania stared at the man her father wanted her to marry. Khalid was 62, twice her age, with graying temples and cold eyes that seemed to undress her even from across the room. His gold teeth caught the chandelier light as he laughed at something another businessman said. "Papa, please," Rania whispered, her voice barely audible above the string quartet. "There has to be another way." Her father, once proud and strong, now looked broken. The construction empire he had built over 30 years was crumbling. The banks were calling in loans. The workers hadn't been paid in months. "He's offering to clear all our debts, Habibi. All of them, but only if you become his second wife." Second wife, the words hit her like ice water. In her modern mind educated at the Sorbonne, the concept felt medieval. But looking at her mother's tear-stained face across the table, Rania knew she had no choice. Does he love me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. "He says you're beautiful. He says you'll give him strong sons." That night, as Rania stood on her apartment balcony overlooking the bustling streets of Casablanca, she made the decision that would change everything. She would sacrifice her dreams, her independence, her very self to save her family from ruin. But she had no idea that walking into Khalid's house would be like entering a war zone where she wasn't just the second wife, she was the enemy. 3 weeks later, the nikah ceremony was small and cold. As the imam pronounced them married, Rania caught sight of a woman watching from the back of the room. Tall, elegant, with eyes that burned with hatred. Saida, the first wife, the woman's life Rania was about to destroy simply by existing. After the ceremony, as traditional sweets were passed around, Saida approached her. "Welcome to hell," she whispered with a smile that could freeze blood. "I hope you're ready for war." Rania's blood turned cold, but she lifted her chin. She had made her choice. Now she would have to live with the consequences, no matter how deadly they might be. The mansion's gates opened like the jaws of a beast, and Rania's taxi disappeared into the distance, leaving her alone with 2 suitcases and a heart full of dread. Khalid's house wasn't just big, it was a fortress. High walls topped with broken glass, security cameras at every corner, and gardens so perfectly manicured they looked artificial. Everything was designed to keep the outside world out and the inside world trapped. "So, you're the child bride." Rania spun around to find Saida standing in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing a silk caftan that probably cost more than Rania's entire wardrobe. At 45, she was still stunning, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that missed nothing. "I'm Rania," she said, extending her hand. Saida looked at the offered hand like it was contaminated. "I know exactly who you are. The question is, do you know what you've walked into?" Before Rania could answer, Khalid appeared, placing a possessive hand on Rania's shoulder. "Saida, I trust you'll help my new wife settle in." The smile that spread across Saida's face was pure poison. "Of course, my dear husband. I'll take such good care of her." That first dinner was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Saida had arranged the seating so Rania sat at the far end of the table, almost like a servant. The conversation was in rapid Arabic dialect that Rania struggled to follow, leaving her isolated and confused. "Pass the salt," Saida said sweetly to Rania, though the salt was right beside her own plate. When Rania reached across the table, Saida knocked over her water glass, soaking Rania's dress. "Oh, how clumsy of me. You really should be more careful, dear." Khalid didn't even look up from his phone. Later that night, as Rania unpacked in what was clearly meant to be the guest room, she found a note slipped under her door. "The last girl who thought she could replace me left in an ambulance. Sweet dreams." Rania's hands shook when she read the words. She had expected coldness, even hostility, but this felt like a death threat. Over the next few days, the psychological games intensified. Saida would rearrange Rania's belongings while she slept. She'd serve Rania food that was either ice cold or burning hot. She'd have whispered phone conversations that stopped the moment Rania entered a room. But the cruelest blow came when Rania met Hassan, Khalid's 15-year-old son from his first marriage. The boy had his father's eyes, but his mother's calculating smile. "My mother says you're here to steal my inheritance," Hassan said casually as they passed in the hallway. "Hassan, that's not true. She says girls like you always have babies quickly to secure their position. Is that your plan?" The words hit Rania like physical blows. She realized that Saida wasn't just fighting for her husband's attention. She was fighting for her son's future. And in that fight, Rania wasn't just the enemy. She was the invader who had to be destroyed. That night, lying alone in the guest room while her husband slept in his master suite, Rania finally understood what Saida had meant. This wasn't a house. It was a battlefield. And the war had just begun.
3 months into the marriage, Rania discovered she was completely cut off from the world. She found out by accident trying to buy groceries at the local market. Her bank card was declined, then declined again. The vendor looked at her with pity as she fumbled through her purse, finding only 50 dirhams, barely enough for bread. "There must be some mistake," Rania said to the bank manager the next day, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Khalid, but your accounts have been frozen on request of the primary account holder, your husband. All financial decisions must be approved by Mrs. Saida Khalid as the senior wife." Senior wife. The title felt like a slap. When Rania confronted Khalid that evening, he barely looked up from his newspaper. "Saida handles all household finances. She knows what's best. But I can't even buy my own clothes." "Why do you need new clothes?" "Saida will buy you whatever you need." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Rania couldn't leave because she had no money. She couldn't get money without Saida's approval, and Saida would never approve anything that gave Rania independence. The psychological warfare escalated. Saida would call Rania's mother, speaking in concerned tones about how poor Rania seemed so unhappy and how perhaps she wasn't ready for marriage. These calls would reduce her mother to tears, adding guilt to Rania's growing desperation. But the cruelest weapon in Saida's arsenal was Hassan. The teenager had been turned into a perfect spy. He would report everything Rania said, everywhere she went, everyone she spoke to. When Rania tried to build a relationship with him, asking about school or his interests, he would respond with cold politeness that felt like mockery. "Hassan, would you like to watch a movie together?" Rania asked one evening. "My mother says you're trying to replace her. I don't need another mother, especially not when young enough to be my sister." The words were clearly Saida's, coming from the mouth of a child she was poisoning against any chance of happiness. But Saida's masterpiece came during Ramadan. For 30 days, Rania tried to participate in the family's iftar meals, hoping to find some connection, some humanity in this cold house. Instead, Saida used every meal to humiliate her. "Rania, dear, could you serve the dates?" "Oh, you don't know the proper way. Here, let me show you." Every correction was delivered with sweet condescension that made Rania feel like a foolish child. "Hassan, tell Rania about your university applications." "Oh, that's right, Rania, you didn't finish your studies, did you?" The lie was spoken so smoothly that even Rania began to doubt her own memories of graduating with honors. The breaking point came when Saida announced she was redecorating. "This house needs a fresh start," she told Khalid over dinner. "I'm thinking of turning the guest room into Hassan's study space. He needs somewhere quiet to work." Rania's room. Saida was trying to eliminate even her small corner of sanctuary. "Where will I sleep?" Rania asked, her voice barely a whisper. Saida's smile was radiant. "Oh, I'm sure we can find you somewhere suitable, perhaps the servants' quarters. They have lovely views of the garden." That night, Rania stood in her small room looking at the few possessions that remained truly hers. She realized that Saida wasn't just trying to break her spirit, she was trying to erase her completely, to make her disappear, without trace, like she had never existed at all. But as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, Rania saw something new in her own eyes. Not defeat, but determination. If Saida wanted war, she would get war. But Rania would fight on her own terms.
It was the coughing that first made Rania pay attention. Khalid had always been a robust man, commanding rooms with his presence and voice, but lately he seemed smaller. The coughing fits came at night, violent and wet, echoing through the mansion's corridors like the sound of something breaking. "It's just a cold," Saida would say dismissively whenever anyone mentioned it. But Rania noticed the bottles of prescription medicine multiplying on Khalid's nightstand. the way he gripped the banister when climbing stairs, the grayish collar that no amount of expensive cologne can mask. Then came the day she found him collapsed in his study. Rania had been looking for Khalid to ask permission to call her mother. Even phone calls required approval in this house. She knocked on his study door, heard no response, and cautiously pushed it open. He was slumped over his massive mahogany desk, breathing but unconscious. Scattered around him were medical reports with words that made her blood run cold. Stage 3, aggressive progression, 6 months. Her husband was dying, and from the dates on the reports, he had been dying for over a year, long before their marriage. "What are you doing here?" Rania spun around to find Saida in the doorway, her face a mask of cold fury. "He collapsed. I was just... Get out, now." But as Saida rushed to Khalid's side, Rania caught something in her expression. Not fear or concern, but calculation. Saida wasn't surprised by his condition. She had known all along. That night, as Khalid recovered in the hospital and Saida maintained her vigil by his bedside, Rania realized the full scope of the deception. Her father hadn't just sold her to save his business. He had sold her to a dying man, probably on Saida's suggestion. The marriage wasn't about love or even children. It was about inheritance. Under Moroccan law, a wife was entitled to a portion of her husband's estate. By marrying Rania, Khalid had unknowingly signed away part of what Saida had always considered solely hers and Hassan's. But what Saida didn't know was that Rania had learned something valuable during her months of isolation: how to become invisible. When you're treated like you don't exist, you start moving through the world like a ghost. And ghosts can hear things they're not supposed to hear. Over the next few weeks, as Khalid grew sicker, Rania began positioning herself carefully. She would sit in corners during his business meetings, so still and quiet that men forgot she was there. She would bring him tea during phone calls, moving like a shadow. And slowly, she began to understand the true scope of Khalid's empire. The man owned 3 apartment buildings in Casablanca, a construction company, 2 restaurants, and a villa in Marrakesh worth millions. He also owned stock in companies across Morocco and France, investments that even Saida didn't know about. But most importantly, she learned something that made her hand shake as she processed it. Khalid was having second thoughts about his will. "I should have treated her better," she heard him tell his lawyer during what he thought was a private conversation. "Rania, she deserves something for what she's endured in this house." The lawyer's response was professional but concerned. "If you want to change your will, Mr. Khalid, we should do it soon. Your condition." Yes, I'll think about it." That night, Rania made a decision that would change everything. If she was going to survive the war Saida had declared, she needed ammunition. She bought a small digital recorder with the last of her hidden money she had sewn into her clothes before entering this house. It was tiny, easily concealed, and could record for hours. From that moment forward, every conversation Khalid had about his will, his wishes, his regrets about his family had treated his second wife, was documented. Rania didn't know it yet, but she was building a case that would explode like a bomb in the marble halls of the courthouse. The war was about to take a very different turn.
Death came on a Tuesday morning as quietly as Khalid had been living his final months. Rania found him in his bed, peaceful at last, free from the coughing that had haunted the mansion's nights. For a moment, looking at his still face, she felt something unexpected: pity. This man who had bought her like property had also been trapped in his own way, caught between duty and desire, tradition and a changing world. But her moment of reflection was shattered by Saida's voice from the doorway. "Well, it's finally over." There was no grief in those words, no sadness, only satisfaction, like a chess player who had just executed a long-planned victory. The funeral was a grand affair, as befitted a man of Khalid's standing. Hundreds of mourners filled the mosque, business associates offered their condolences, and the imam spoke eloquently about a life well lived. But through it all, Rania felt like she was watching a performance, a carefully orchestrated show directed by Saida. During the traditional 3-day mourning period, Saida played the grieving widow to perfection. She wore black, received visitors with dignified sorrow, and spoke movingly about her beloved husband of 20 years. Meanwhile, Rania was relegated to the background, acknowledged only when someone specifically asked about the second wife. But on the fourth day, the performance ended, Rania was in the kitchen making tea when Hassan burst in, his face flushed with excitement. "Mama says you have to leave today. She says this isn't your house anymore." Before Rania could respond, Saida appeared holding an envelope with the seal of a law firm. "Eviction notice," she said with barely contained glee. "You have 24 hours to collect your things and go. This house belongs to Hassan and me now." Rania took the papers with steady hands, though her heart was racing. "What about Khalid's will?" Saida's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, my dear child, did you think he left you anything? You were here for less than a year. I was his wife for 20. Every dirham, every property, every investment belongs to his real family. I want to see the will. You'll see it in court if you're foolish enough to contest it, but let me save you the embarrassment. You get nothing. The marriage contract specifies that wives married for less than 2 years receive no inheritance in case of death." Rania's blood turned to ice. It was true. She remembered signing papers she barely understood, trusting that her father had read the terms carefully. But her father had been desperate, and desperate people don't read the fine print. That night, as she packed her meager belongings, Rania could hear Saida and Hassan celebrating downstairs. They were drinking expensive wine and making plans for renovating their house, discussing which of Khalid's cars Hassan would drive, and debating whether to sell the Marrakesh villa immediately or keep it for vacations. "I told you she was temporary," Saida's voice carried up the stairs. "These little girls think they can come into established families and take what isn't theirs. They never learn until it's too late." But what Saida didn't know was that during those months of careful invisibility, Rania had learned something crucial. Khalid had been having second thoughts about more than just his will. Hidden in her small recorder were hours of conversations where her dying husband expressed regret about the prenuptial agreement, talked about wanting to make things right with Rania, and most importantly, discussed specific properties and investments that he wanted her to have. "She's been more of a companion to me than a wife," she had recorded him telling his lawyer just 2 weeks before his death. "If anything happens to me, I want her to have the apartment building on Hassan II Boulevard. She earned it, putting up with this house." As Rania closed her suitcase and prepared to face an uncertain future, she touched the recorder in her pocket. Saida thought she had won. Hassan was already planning how to spend his inheritance. But the real battle hadn't even begun. And this time, Rania wouldn't be the helpless second wife everyone could ignore. This time, she would be the woman who brought the house of lies crashing down.
The courthouse in Casablanca was a monument to justice, with marble columns and soaring ceilings that made every whisper echo like thunder. But as Rania walked through its halls, clutching a folder of documents, she felt like David approaching Goliath. Saida had spared no expense. Her legal team filled an entire row, 5 lawyers in expensive suits, their briefcases thick with documents that supposedly proved Rania had no claim to any part of Khalid's estate. They exuded confidence, the kind that comes from never having lost a case like this. Rania's lawyer was a young woman named Amina, fresh from university and working for legal aid. She was smart and passionate, but Rania could see the worry in her eyes as she surveyed the opposition. "Are you sure about this?" Amina whispered as they took their seats. "It's not too late to accept their settlement offer." The settlement was insulting, 50,000 dirhams and a promise not to contest the will. Barely enough to rent a small apartment for a year. "I'm sure," Rania said, though her hands were shaking. The judge was a stern-faced woman in her 60s who had seen decades of inheritance disputes. She looked at the case file with the wary expression of someone who expected this to be another routine matter. Saida's lead lawyer, a silver-haired man named Benali, rose to address the court. His voice was smooth as silk and twice as deadly. "Your Honor, this is a simple case of a young woman trying to exploit a brief marriage to a wealthy man. The deceased, Khalid al-Rashid, was very clear about his intentions. His will, properly witnessed and notarized, leaves his entire estate to his wife of 20 years and their son." He gestured towards Saida, who sat in the front row wearing a black dress that managed to be both modest and expensive. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, the picture of grieving dignity. The marriage contract clearly states that any wife married for less than 2 years forfeits inheritance rights in case of the husband's death. This clause was included specifically to protect the family from fortune hunters. The words hit Rania like physical blows. Fortune hunter, gold digger, opportunist. She could feel the judge's eyes on her, sizing her up, seeing exactly what Benali wanted her to see. For 3 hours, the lawyer methodically destroyed Rania's character and her case. He presented bank records showing she had never contributed financially to the household. He brought witnesses who testified that she had been difficult and ungrateful. He even produced Hassan, who testified that Rania had tried to turn him against his mother and had seemed interested only in his father's money. By lunch break, Rania felt like she had been flayed alive. Amina tried to offer encouragement, but they both knew they were losing badly. "They've covered every angle," Amina said over coffee. "The will is ironclad, the marriage contract is clear, and they've painted you as exactly the kind of person these laws were designed to protect against." "What about the recordings?" "What recordings?" Rania's hand moved to the flash drive in her purse. During all their preparation, all their strategy sessions, she had never mentioned the hours of conversations she had captured. She had been saving them, but now she realized why. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about justice. When court resumed, Amina rose to present their case. She talked about Rania's sacrifice, leaving her career to care for a sick man. She spoke about the months of psychological abuse Rania had endured. She argued that the marriage contract was unconscionable, signed under duress by a desperate father. But she could see she was losing the judge. Then Rania stood up. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Amina was shocked. They hadn't planned this. "I have evidence that changes everything," Rania said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She walked to the front of the courtroom, every eye upon her. From her purse, she withdrew the small digital recorder and a flash drive. "For the last 6 months of my husband's life, I recorded his conversations, not to spy, but because I could see he was dying, and I was afraid his true wishes would be forgotten." The courtroom erupted. Benali was on his feet, objecting. Saida's face had gone white. Hassan was confused and frightened. But the judge held up her hand for silence. "Play the recordings." The first conversation filled the courtroom with Khalid's voice, weak but clear. "I've been thinking about Rania. I brought her into this house and we've treated her terribly. If I die, I want her to have something." The second recording was even more damaging. "Saida has been cruel to her. I see it, but I'm too weak to stop it. The girl deserves better than what she's gotten from my family." But the recording that changed everything was the last one, made just 5 days before Khalid's death. "I want to change my will. I want Rania to have the Hassan II Boulevard and half the investments. She sacrificed her life for mine, and my family has made her pay for it every day. It's not right. Mr. Khalid, we would need to make these changes officially. Yes, tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. I'm tired of being a coward." Tomorrow never came. Khalid died in his sleep that night. The courtroom was dead silent as the recording ended. Then chaos erupted. Benali was shouting about inadmissible evidence. Saida was screaming that the recordings were fake. Hassan was crying, finally understanding the full scope of his mother's manipulation. But through it all, the judge sat quietly, listening to the voice of a dead man expressing his final wishes. When order was restored, her verdict was swift and final. Based on these recordings, it's clear that the deceased intended to change his will but died before he could. I hereby order that his final expressed wishes be honored. Rania had won, but as she looked in Saida's face, twisted with rage and hatred, she realized that winning the battle was only the beginning.
The victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, as Rania sat in the lawyer's office signing papers that made her one of the wealthiest women in Casablanca, she felt only emptiness. The Hassan II Boulevard apartment building alone was worth 12 million dirhams. The investment portfolio added another 8 million. She also inherited the Marrakesh villa and a share in Khalid's construction company. Overnight, she had gone from having nothing to having everything. But wealth couldn't erase the memory of Saida's face when the verdict was read. "You destroyed my life," Saida had whispered in the courthouse hallway, her elegant composure finally cracking. 20 years I gave him, 20 years of being the perfect wife, and you walk away with half of everything after 11 months? Hassan stood beside his mother, no longer the manipulative teenager who had served as Saida's spy. He looked broken, a child who had just learned that everything he thought he knew about his family was a lie.
My inheritance, he said quietly. My university fund, my future. It's all gone, isn't it? Rania had wanted to say something comforting, but what comfort could she offer? The truth was harsh. Yes, his inheritance was cut in half. Yes, his future would be different than planned, but he would still have more than most people could dream of. Now, 3 weeks after the verdict, Rania stood in what had once been Khalid's study, looking out at the garden where she had been made to feel like an intruder. The house was legally half hers now. She could stay if she wanted. She could make Saida's life as miserable as Saida had made hers, but she didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. The realization had come slowly, during long nights in the expensive hotel suite she had rented after the trial. She could spend the rest of her life fighting with Saida, trading wounds and humiliations. She could force them from the house, watch Hassan's dreams crumble, take satisfaction in Saida's downfall. But what would that make her? A knock on the study door interrupted her thoughts. Hassan stood in the doorway looking smaller than she remembered. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They sat across from each other in the same chairs where Khalid used to conduct his business meetings, the same chairs where Rania had sat invisibly, recording the conversations that would change everything. "I'm sorry," Hassan said finally, "for what I said to you, for spying on you, for helping my mother make your life hell." Rania studied his face. The calculation was gone, replaced with genuine remorse. "You were protecting your family," she said. "I understand that." "No, you don't." Hassan's voice cracked. "I wasn't protecting anyone. I was angry. Angry that my father brought home a woman younger than some of my friends. Angry that everyone would whisper about our family. Angry that you were so educated and accomplished, and it made me feel small." The honesty in his words surprised her. "My mother used that anger. She fed it, shaped it into something ugly. I became someone I don't recognize when I look in the mirror." "You're 15, Hassan. We all make mistakes when we're young." "Some mistakes destroy people's lives." He looked directly at her for the first time. "I know what my mother did to you was evil. I know you had every right to take everything and leave us with nothing." Rania felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't the cold, manipulative boy who had served as Saida's weapon. This was a child who had been weaponized by his own mother and was finally old enough to see the damage. That night, Rania called her lawyer. "I want to make some changes to the inheritance distribution," she said. "Changes? Rania, you won. You don't need to give them anything more." "I want to give them everything." The silence on the phone stretched for long seconds. "Rania, I think you should consider this more carefully. After what they put you through." "That's exactly why I have to do this." 2 days later, Rania sat across from Saida in the same courthouse where their battle had been fought. This time there were no lawyers present, just a notary to witness the documents. Saida looked haggard, as if she hadn't slept since the trial. Her perfect composure was gone, replaced with exhaustion and defeat. "I don't understand," Saida said as she read the papers. "You're giving me the house, the business, everything except the apartment building?" "I'm keeping one building for income," Rania explained. "Everything else goes to you and Hassan." "Why?" The question came out like a sob. "I had asked myself the same question 1,000 times. Because holding on to anger would make me into someone I don't want to be. Because Hassan deserves a chance at the future he planned. Because you loved your husband for 20 years, even if you didn't love me." "I hated you," Saida whispered. "From the moment I saw you, I hated everything you represented." "I know. You were everything I used to be, young, educated, full of possibilities, and watching you in my house was like looking at a ghost of my former self." For the first time, Rania saw past Saida's cruelty to the woman underneath, a woman who had given up her own dreams 20 years ago to become the perfect wife, only to watch her husband bring home a younger version of who she used to be. "I'm sorry," Saida said, and the words sounded like they were torn from her throat. "For everything I did to you, for the person I became." Rania signed the last document and slid it across the table. "We both became people we didn't recognize in that house. Now we can choose to be different." As they left the courthouse, Hassan was waiting outside. When he saw his mother's tears, not tears of rage this time, but of relief and gratitude, He hugged her fiercely. "Thank you," he said to Rania over his mother's shoulder, "for giving me back my mother." Walking away from them, Rania felt something she hadn't experienced in over a year: lightness. The weight of anger, of the need for justice, of the hunger for revenge, all of it lifted from her shoulders like chains falling away. She had won more than a legal battle. She had won back her soul.
6 months later, Rania stood at the departure gate of Mohammed V. International Airport, holding a boarding pass to Paris. Her single suitcase contained everything she owned that mattered: her clothes, her mother's jewelry, her university diploma, and the small digital recorder that had changed her life. The apartment building she had kept provided enough income to live comfortably anywhere in the world. She had chosen Paris not for its glamour, but for its anonymity. She could disappear into its streets, become someone new, write her own story from the first page. Her phone buzzed with a message from Hassan. "Got accepted to university in Rabat, architecture program. Thank you for making it possible." Another message from her mother. "So proud of the woman you've become. Your father sends his love." Even her father had been transformed by what happened. The shame of what he had done, selling his daughter to save his business, had driven him to rebuild both his company and his relationship with his family through honest work rather than desperate bargains. But the message that surprised her most came from an unknown number. "I heard about what you did for Saida and Hassan. My organization helps women in difficult marriages. Would you consider joining us? Your story could help others. Fatima Alzara, Women's Legal Aid Society." Rania stared at the message for a long time. She had imagined her future as a quiet one, perhaps returning to school, traveling, finding peace in solitude. She hadn't considered that her experience might be valuable to others. But as she looked around the airport, she saw women traveling alone, some confident, others afraid. She saw families saying goodbye, daughters leaving home for unknown futures. She saw herself 8 months ago, trembling with fear as she entered a marriage she didn't want to save, a family she loved. How many other women were trapped in houses like Khalid's, fighting wars they didn't know how to win? As our flight was called, Rania made a decision that surprised even her. Instead of boarding, she walked to the customer service desk. "I'd like to cancel my flight." "Is there a problem, miss?" Rania smiled, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since her university days. "No, I just realized I'm needed here." 3 weeks later, she stood in front of a small office in downtown Casablanca, reading the newly painted sign, "Second Chances Legal Clinic, free legal aid for women in crisis." The office was modest, but it had something her mansion had never possessed: hope. Her first client was a young woman named Aisha, barely 19, facing a forced marriage to a man 3 times her age. As Aisha told her story, the family debts, the desperate father, the older man promising to solve all their problems, Rania saw herself reflected in the girl's frightened eyes. "What can I do? I don't have any choice," Aisha said. "You always have choices. They might not be easy choices, but they exist. Let me show you what's possible." Over the following months, the clinic grew. Word spread through the networks that women use to survive. Whispered conversations in markets, passed notes in mosques, messages shared through social media. Women came seeking help with inheritance disputes, divorce proceedings, domestic violence cases, and forced marriages. Each case was different, but they all shared something. Women who had been told they were powerless, discovering that they had more strength than they knew. Rania used her resources carefully. The apartment building's income funded the clinic's operations. Her own experience provided insight into the psychological warfare that trapped women in abusive situations. And the recording device that had saved her became a tool she taught other women to use, not for revenge, but for protection. 1 year after leaving Khalid's house, Rania received an unexpected visitor. Saida stood in the clinic's waiting room, dressed simply, looking older but somehow more peaceful than Rania remembered. "I came to volunteer," she said without preamble. "Saida, I know what it's like to lose yourself in someone else's house. I know what it feels like to become so desperate to protect your position that you destroy your own humanity. Maybe I can help other women avoid the mistakes I made." They worked together that day, 2 women who had once been enemies, helping a mother navigate a custody battle.
Watching Saida offer comfort to a crying client, Rania realized that redemption was possible for anyone willing to choose it. That evening, as Rania locked up the clinic and walked through the streets of Casablanca, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had entered this city as a sacrifice, a daughter trading her freedom for her family's security. She was leaving each day as something entirely different, a woman who had found her power not in wealth or revenge, but in choosing to help others find theirs. Her phone rang. It was Hassan. Aunt Rania, he had started calling her that after the inheritance transfer, a term of respect rather than family obligation. I'm designing my first building for architecture class. I want to show you the plans. What kind of building? A women's shelter. I figured it was time I designed something that mattered. As Rania smiled, walking through the streets of a city that once felt like a prison but now felt like home, she realized that every choice she had made, the marriage, the survival, the fight, the forgiveness, had led her exactly where she needed to be. She had lost herself in Khalid's house, but she had found something better in return, the woman she was meant to become. The woman who chose peace over pride, service over revenge, hope over bitterness. The woman who discovered that sometimes the greatest victory isn't taking everything you can get. It's giving away everything you don't need and keeping only what makes you whole. Her story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time since that terrifying night when her father asked her to sacrifice her future, Rania Al-Mansouri was excited to see what came next.